There are places in this world where even ghosts refuse to stay overnight. But humans, being tragically overconfident mammals, still book a reservation with a smile. The Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles is one of those places, built tall and proud during the Roaring '20s. It now leans slightly on its own bad decisions, like a drunk uncle at a family barbecue. Our story opens not with thunder or lightning, because this is LA, and the weather's too lazy for drama, but with a buzzing neon sign, a wheezing elevator, and a solo backpacker with a questionable Wi-Fi connection. Her name is Amy. She's 26 Canadian, and very into historical architecture, which is a bold personality trait for someone who booked a night at a place nicknamed the Suicide Hotel. But hey, it was cheap, and the Yelp reviews only hinted at hauntings. Plus, blood on the walls could be metaphorical. Right. The lobby smelled like lemon pledge and broken dreams. A tired man at the desk handed her a room key without looking up. Elevators to your left. If it shakes, just lean with it. Solid travel advice. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're here, post your location and local time. I want to know how late it is, where you are, and whether your hallway just creaked for no reason. Now, let's return to Amy, who will soon regret not reading the part of the hotel description that mentioned mild supernatural residue. As the elevator hiccuped its way to the 6th floor, she heard soft music, old-timey, tinny, like a music box melting. She shook it off, reached her room 608 and opened the door. Everything looked fine, which, for the Cecil Hotel, should have been her first red flag. The room was small, beige walls, one window that opened just enough to tempt, but not enough to jump. The sink faucet dripped in perfect rhythm, like it was keeping time for something she couldn't hear. A faint odor of rust, possibly tomato soup, possibly not. Amy unpacked, scrolled through TikTok. Her feed was full of vintage crime reenactors for some reason, and finally collapsed onto the bed, which was slightly crunchy. She didn't investigate further. At around 2:13 a.m., the radiator exhaled, loudly. Then, silence, until there was a knock. Not at the door, from inside the wall. Now, this might be a good time to insert a true historical fact. The Cecil Hotel, since its opening in 1927, has been linked to at least 16 documented deaths, including multiple suicides, overdoses, and the occasional unexplained body found in the water tank. It was also the temporary home of more than one serial killer. The walls, as it turns out, are not just plaster and insulation. They're a sponge soaked in bad intentions. Amy stared at the wall. Knock, knock, knock. She reached for her phone. No service. Classic, she muttered. She opened the door to the hallway. Empty. A single light flickered at the end, but it could have just been trying to vibe. Then came the music again. Faint, wavering. An old jazz standard. She leaned out, eyes darting. Nothing. Then her door slammed behind her. Lock clicked. Now, Amy was a rational person. She believed in science. She had strong opinions about oat milk. But she also believed that if your hotel starts playing ghost jazz and slamming doors, it's time to leave. She descended the stairwell 2 steps at a time, only to find that the lobby had changed. The furniture was older. The wallpaper floral. A bellhop in a 1930s uniform stared at her. Then blinked. Then vanished. Philosophers often debate the nature of time. Is it linear? Is it a loop? Is it a very long hallway with doors you shouldn't open at the Cecil? The answer might be yes. Amy returned to the front desk, but the desk clerk was different. Older, his clothes too crisp. The newspaper on the counter said 1947. Amy turned around. The lobby was empty again. Back in her room, somehow unlocked. Now her phone had signal. She FaceTimed her friend back in Toronto, who yawned and asked, "Why are you in black and white?" She wasn't, But the screen showed her in monochrome. That's when she noticed the music had returned, and someone was humming along behind the bathroom mirror. As a quirky detail, it's worth mentioning that in 2015, a horror-themed Airbnb guest book described the Cecil as charmingly haunted, like if a Cracker Barrel had unresolved trauma. Someone else just wrote, 1010 would scream again. Amy didn't sleep. She spent the night curled under the stiff bedsheets, eyes fixed on the door, half expecting a bellhop with no face to ask if she'd like a mint. At dawn, the knocking stopped. At 6:42 the faucet turned itself off. At 7:20 she checked out without waiting for the elevator, back on the sidewalk. She took one last look up at the building. It loomed. Even in daylight, it managed to look like it was frowning. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. An email from the hotel. Thank you for your stay. Your next reservation is confirmed. Room 608. Check in tonight. Amy didn't reply. But later that evening, the keycard for 608 was used again. By who? No one knows. Let's keep walking. We've got a lot of floors left to climb. In the beginning, the Cecil was never supposed to be terrifying. It was supposed to be grand. Los Angeles in the 1920s was the ultimate fever dream, a dusty desert town, mid-glow-up, with money pouring in like gin at a flapper's wedding. Hotels were springing up everywhere. But the Cecil was built to be different. It wasn't just another place to sleep. It was supposed to be the jewel of Main Street. A 17-story Beaux-Arts marvel with a marble lobby, stained glass windows, and an elevator that probably flirted with the guests. Its architect, Loy Lester Smith, wasn't a household name, but he dreamed big enough to budget $1 million for a structure that would stand forever. Note whenever someone in history says something will stand forever, the universe hears it as a dare. The Cecil opened in 1927. 6 months later, the Great Depression arrived. Timing, as they say, is everything. It didn't take long before the Cecil's client list began to shift from wealthy travelers to long-term residents, then to transients, then to people who answered to, "Hey, you with the knife." The rich moved west, the poor stayed downtown, and the Cecil stood awkwardly between them, too nice for Skid Row, too cursed for tourists. Here's a true historical fact. Skid Row, the neighborhood where the Cecil sits, was the result of a deliberate city planning decision. LA officials zoned it to concentrate homelessness and poverty in one area, a policy some urban theorists describe as containment, and others call urban cruelty dressed in bureaucracy. And there stood the Cecil, like an antique dollhouse someone left in a junkyard, too pretty to knock down, too haunted to renovate. But let's talk about the decor. In the 1930s, guests described the wallpaper as funereal chic. The color palette ranged from nicotine gold to uncomfortable green. Chandeliers flickered even when the power was stable. Maids reportedly quit mid-clean after hearing voices ask, "Would you like a towel or a rope?" Still, people came, and some stayed. One such guest was a man named George. He checked in during 1931. He never left. Literally. He jumped from his window 4 days later. His death made the paper, not because it was unusual, but because it had happened again. By 1938, the Cecil had logged over a dozen suicides. Jumpers, mostly. A few poisonings. One guest who drank bleach because he thought it would cleanse his karma. It did not. The LA Times stopped printing every incident. It became too routine. A death at the Cecil was like a bad Yelp review common, and usually ignored. By the 1940s, the hotel had earned a new nickname, the Suicide. Not Suicide Hotel, just the Suicide. Imagine being so consistently deadly that you lose your nouns. A philosophical debate persists. Is a place inherently evil, or do we simply project our own darkness onto it? The Cecil makes a compelling argument for both. Take the case of Julia French. She was 27, just like Amy in our story. Julia checked in with a man described as nervous-looking. Witnesses later recalled they argued in the hallway about the nature of sin and whether fish could feel shame. That's your quirky detail for this section. Julia was passionate about fish ethics. 2 hours later, she leapt from the 9th floor. The man vanished. Her shoes were neatly placed beside the window. The newspaper called it an unfortunate end. Hotel staff called it Tuesday. But not all guests jumped. Some disappeared. Elevator records showed check-ins that didn't match check-outs. Housekeepers swore certain rooms changed shape overnight. A closet would become a bathroom. A bed would be gone. One bellhop claimed the 10th floor added a door that wasn't there before. It opened to bricks. Just bricks. As if someone had forgotten to finish reality in that corner. Meanwhile, management tried desperately to keep things normal. They hired a new concierge in 1942 who lasted all of 6 days. He left a note behind. The shadows know my name. Maintenance logs became cryptic. One worker wrote that the plumbing screams at 3:33 ma'am, in a feminine voice. Another described a hole behind the boiler that breathed. When asked what he meant, he just said, like lungs, but angrier. It's worth pausing here to reflect on what happens when a place becomes soaked in grief. Some psychologists argue that collective trauma imprints itself on locations. Others argue that we're pattern-seeking primates, and every creaky floorboard is just an overactive amygdala doing its best. But back at the Cecil, reality didn't need exaggeration. In 1947, Elizabeth Short, better known as the Black Dahlia, was allegedly seen drinking at the Cecil's bar days before her murder. Whether it was truly her, or just an urban legend spliced into the timeline like a bad fan edit, it added to the hotel's mystique. Another infamous puzzle piece in a jigsaw of rot and velvet. Some say the Cecil's curse is architectural. Others say it's karmic. Still others whisper that it's built on an old Spanish burial site, a former gallows, or, and this is real, the dry, haunted remnants of LA's original oil boom. Like the hotel was constructed directly over regret itself. By the 1950s, the building was tired. Its walls yellowed. The plumbing groaned like it remembered every scream. Rooms went for less than the price of a sandwich. The once grand lobby was filled with faded glamour and suspicious stains. A new slogan was attempted, downtown's hidden gem. Someone crossed out gem and wrote grave in lipstick on the hallway mirror. The hotel didn't try slogans again after that. By the end of the decade, the Cecil had become more than just a hotel. It was a story generator. A broken jukebox of bad endings and whispered apologies. People came for a night and left part of themselves behind. Some guests left all of themselves behind. And the building, it just watched. It didn't judge. It just absorbed. Which brings us back to Amy. She had no idea what she'd walked into. Just that something felt off. And not weird Airbnb host off. More like the stairwell tried to bite me off. But that's for tomorrow. Tonight, the walls hum lullabies made of sorrow. And somewhere near the boiler, something breathes again. If you've ever booked a hotel and thought, wow, this rate is too good, congratulations, you may have accidentally booked a night at the Cecil during its golden age of weekly corpses. By the 1930s, the Cecil Hotel had gone from affordable grandeur to the place where your shoes might be stolen by the room itself. Downtown Los Angeles was changing, Skid Row was expanding, and the Cecil, instead of adapting or fleeing, simply adjusted its expectations. Less elegant travelers, more troubled souls with unresolved narratives. One manager at the time reportedly joked, "We don't serve breakfast anymore, just alibis." Let's get to the numbers, because this isn't just spooky storytelling, it's true historical fact territory. Between 1931 and the mid-1960s, at least a dozen suicides were confirmed at the Cecil Hotel. That's confirmed, meaning someone found a body, filled out paperwork, and usually shrugged when asked why the Cecil. It became so routine that staff started using euphemisms. We've got another jumper. In 1204, someone checked out from the roof. One poor bellhop reportedly walked in on 3 different deaths in his first week. He later became a dentist. Safer profession. Fewer ghosts. It started with Benjamin Dowdish in 1931. Clean cut. 46 shot himself in the head with a .38 caliber pistol. No note. Just a Bible on the nightstand. The room was cleaned, the sheets changed, and another guest checked in the next day. Then came Sergeant Louis D. Borden in 34, slit his throat with a razor. He did leave a note, citing poor health. But many wondered why a man that meticulous would choose the Cecil of all places. Shortly after Grace E. Magro fell from a 9th-story window. She hit power lines on the way down. Her companion, a man no one could identify, was found wandering the halls, dazed, muttering the name Carolyn. There were no registered guests by that name. By 1938, an internal memo described the Cecil as having an atmospheric issue. That's like calling Chernobyl a little toasty. Let's take a quirky detour here. The hotels lost and found during this era included 17 shoes, all left foot, 4 rosaries, a taxidermied possum, no tags, and 1 copy of Ulysses with a blood-stained bookmark on page 666. Coincidence? Probably. Funny. Definitely. But here's the philosophical rub: what happens when death becomes normal? Some existentialists argue that familiarity breeds detachment. You see something often enough, you stop reacting. Others believe that normalization of tragedy leads to deeper cultural rot, that when we stop caring, we start decaying. And the Cecil, by the late 30s, was starting to smell like indifference. Still, the hotel remained open. It always remained open, even as the elevator groaned like it resented each guest, even as the wallpaper began to peel in the shape of faces no one recognized. One housekeeper quit mid-shift after finding a guest sitting upright in bed, eyes open, mouth smiling. He had been dead for 48 hours. Another staff member went to deliver towels and was greeted by a parrot that screamed, "Help me," in a human voice. The room was unoccupied. Yes, that one's real. The parrot was removed by animal control. It refused to speak again after that. Some guests didn't jump or slice or swallow poison. They just disappeared. In 1944, a 19-year-old named Dorothy Purcell gave birth to a baby in her hotel room. She hadn't known she was pregnant. She threw the newborn out the window. It landed on the hotel's marquee. She was later found not guilty by reason of insanity. The baby had no name. Neither did the father. Neither did. In 1947, Robert Smith jumped from the 7th floor. A week later, Pauline Otten leapt from the 9th and landed on a pedestrian below. George Giannini, killing them both. The papers tried to say it was a double suicide. No one believed it. George just had bad timing and worse real estate instincts. This all happened while management kept updating the brochures. Close to nightlife. Affordable rates. Spacious views. Yes, especially if you look down. By the 1950s, guests began to refer to the hotel in hushed tones. That place downtown, or you know where. No one said Cecil aloud anymore. Some believed the name itself was cursed. That speaking it summoned attention you didn't want. The building's reputation grew teeth. Small ones at first, just rumors, whispers. But soon, it was in police reports. Journalists started using phrases like haunted or cursed, no longer tongue-in-cheek, but with a kind of exhausted certainty. Something's wrong with that place. One detective wrote in a private letter. I don't know what it is, but it's not just poverty or drugs or loneliness. The walls. They know. Which brings us to the most enduring myth of all the rhythm of the deaths. Some theorists noticed a pattern. Every 6 months, someone would die at the Cecil. Suicide, homicide, freak accident, it didn't matter. It was clockwork. One investigator even built a spreadsheet to prove it. The dates lined up. like the hotel had a quota. Skeptics claimed it was just statistical noise. After all, in a city with millions, bad things happen, but even skeptics stayed elsewhere. In the mid-1960s, the Cecil changed hands again. The new owner claimed he was going to clean up the place. 3 weeks into his tenure, a guest tried to climb into the dumbwaiter and was crushed. The dumbwaiter had been decommissioned since 1959. That's your true historical fact. The dumbwaiter death happened, though it's rarely discussed in official documents. Like many things at the Cecil, it got lost in the shuffle. Amy didn't know any of this. As she scrolled through her phone the morning after her first sleepless night, she noticed something odd. Her GPS said she was still in her room, but her phone's compass, it spun in slow, deliberate circles, like it was trying to find north, and failing. She took a shower. The water smelled metallic, not like copper, like something remembering blood. The mirror fogged, and in the condensation, a word appeared. Stare? She laughed, nervously, wiped it away. It reappeared, only this time, it said still here. Room 203 had its own personality. That's what the old maintenance guy, Harold, used to say, usually while holding a wrench like a crucifix and chewing licorice that smelled suspiciously like sadness. I don't go near 203, he told the new hire once. That room doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be left alone. And you know what? For a while, people listened, until the man with the bagpipes moved in. Let's be clear. No one expects serenity from a guy with bagpipes. Bagpipes are, objectively, an instrument that sounds like an angry duck giving a TED Talk. But this guy, Paulie McGill, wasn't just loud. He was persistent. He'd check into room 203 every few months, stay for a week, and spend his evenings rehearsing mournful Scottish tunes no one requested. Then one night, he stopped playing. For good. Housekeeping found his bagpipes in the tub. Still warm. Paulie was gone. No signs of struggle. The window was shut. The bed was made. The only odd thing, the mirror had fogged from the inside, even though the room was cold, and etched in the condensation, just like Amy would see decades later, was a word, tune. The case was quietly dropped. LAPD called it voluntary disappearance. The front desk staff called it Room 203 doing its thing again. This was the fourth unexplained disappearance from that room. The third if you didn't count the guy who left everything behind, except a note that said, "Don't feed the vent." Room 203 was sealed off briefly in the 70s, but demand was too high. Low-income tenants needed a place to crash, and the Cecil was still dirt cheap, so back it went into rotation. Here's your true historical fact. In the 1970s and 80s, the Cecil converted part of its operations into a single-room occupancy hotel, or SRO, where long-term residents, often low-income or transient individuals, rented rooms by the week or month. It became part of LA's unofficial housing safety net. Unfortunately, it was also part of LA's murder rate. That's how Benny Mendez ended up in 203 in 1986. Benny was a jazz saxophonist with one working lung, an affection for sour gummy worms, and a habit of talking to lamps. The lamps never talked back until he checked into the Cecil. On his third night, Benny called the front desk to complain that the radiator was whispering about his childhood. The clerk assumed this was a euphemism for drug use. By morning, Benny was gone. No trace, no bill paid. The only thing left behind, a Polaroid, face down on the nightstand. When the clerk flipped it over, it showed an empty room, but a figure just visible in the reflection of the mirror. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a bellhop's uniform from the 1930s. Room 203 became a sort of quiet legend among the staff. No one wanted to clean it. One employee wore earbuds and recited facts about sea otters while vacuuming, just to drown out the singing behind the walls. Quirky detail time. The sea otter facts worked sort of. The employee reported that the room's whispering shifted to include phrases like fur density and keystone species. Which begs the question, was the ghost learning? Or just being polite? Over time, patterns emerged. Guests in room 203 frequently reported hearing breathing from the vent, a slow knocking under the bed, the sound of bagpipes at exactly 3:07 ma. But the weirdest report came in 1992. A man named Dennis wrote in the hotel feedback card, "Mirror seems off. Feels like it's watching me. Also, my toothpaste turned red." No biggie. Management didn't follow up. Years later, when the room was finally emptied out for deep cleaning, they found strange etchings under the sink, dozens of tiny tally marks. One section read, 203 guests stayed too long. Another simply said, "You look tired. Rest. Stay." One paranormal researcher who visited in the late 90s swore the room had its own electromagnetic field signature. The instruments read spikes whenever anyone mentioned bagpipes. Some dismissed it as a wiring issue. Others suggested room 203 was the source of a spiritual feedback loop, like a tape recorder left too close to the speaker. Whatever had happened there had replayed itself until it wore a groove into reality. And here's a little philosophical debate. Is a haunted space a product of emotional energy? Or is it simply a trick of architecture, a space designed so poorly that it feels haunted? Academics go back and forth. But one theory posits that buildings, like people, can suffer trauma, that a location subjected to enough fear, violence, and grief can learn how to echo it back. Room 203 didn't need ghosts. It had memory. Which brings us to Amy again. After the second night in room 608, she felt drained, like she hadn't slept in a month. Her phone battery dropped 70% in 10 minutes. The outlet sparked when she tried to plug it in. She opened the bathroom cabinet. It was empty except for a folded napkin that read, "Switch rooms, or else you'll start humming." She laughed, nervously. At the front desk, she asked to change rooms. The new clerk was younger, wore AirPods, and had a lanyard that said, "Intern, do not blame me." "Only room open is 203, he said, chewing a protein bar. "Wanna swap?" Amy hesitated. Something tugged at her. A whisper at the edge of her memory. A hum she couldn't place. "Sure," she said. That night, she moved her stuff to room 203. The hallway light above the door flickered once. She noticed the wallpaper had bubbles like it was trying to breathe. The vent hummed. The mirror was a little warped. She unpacked, brushed her teeth. Her toothpaste turned red. She laughed again, louder this time, but it sounded forced. Then she heard it. Bagpipes, just faintly. From under the bed. Night clerks know things. Not because they're trained in forensics or ghost detection. Most of them are barely trained in customer service. But because they see what happens when the world's asleep and pretending everything's fine. Vinny had been the night clerk at the Cecil from 1978 until 2003. 25 years of fluorescent lighting, passive-aggressive guests, and more unexplained puddles than he cared to count. If the day shift handled complaints, the night shift handled confessions, or screams. Occasionally, both at once. Vinny smoked menthols, drank gas station coffee that could dissolve drywall. He wore the same brown cardigan year-round and claimed the elevator only listened to him. "You just have to ask it nicely," he'd say, tapping the button twice, like he was knocking on an old friend's door. She's temperamental. That she was the left elevator, the one closest to the stairwell. The right one had been broken for years and once trapped a nun and 2 Girl Scouts for 6 hours. After that, they put up a sign, "US's, at your own salvation." On quiet nights, Vinny would sit behind the check-in desk and read books with titles like The Haunted Gut Gastrointestinal Ghosts and You, or E. Grace, Lovecraft's Guide to Customer Service. He claimed he didn't believe in ghosts, just high strangeness and low wages. But he had one story. The one he never told. Until one night, over a styrofoam cup of diner chili. He shared it with a bellhop named Darren, who later quit and became a beekeeper in Oregon. The story went like this. It was 1983, a Tuesday. A man checked in with no luggage, paid cash, signed the guest book as John L. No last name, no ID. He asked for room 505. Vinny checked the chart. 505 wasn't available. I'll wait, the man said. Now here's the true historical fact. Room 505 hadn't been used since 1972, when a gas leak caused a small explosion in the bathroom. The pipes were sealed, the room padlocked, but the man insisted. It's been calling, he said. It remembers me. Vinny, being a man who'd seen 2 marriages and 1 bathroom ceiling collapse, just shrugged. Suit yourself. He gave him the key, not because he believed him, but because sometimes giving people what they want is easier than explaining why you shouldn't. The man never checked out. After 2 days, housekeeping knocked. No answer. The door was still locked from the inside. They opened it with a master key. The room was empty. No bed, no furniture, just dust and an old rotary phone. Off the hook. Still humming. Vinny checked the logs. The key had never been returned. Later that week, a second guest came asking for 505. I used to live here, she said. Room 505. I want to see if it still knows me. Vinny started locking that door with 2 chains after that. And once, late at night, he swore he heard the phone ringing from inside. Every single night. At 2:07 morm, which, coincidentally or not, was the exact time Amy's watch started running backward in room 203. Let's pause here for a philosophical debate. Some scholars argue that time in haunted locations isn't linear, it's porous, like a sponge. Certain places act as bleed points, where past and future intermingle. At the Cecil, time doesn't just move forward. It loops, repeats, sometimes rewinds. Like the building wants a do-over it'll never get. Vinny believed it, or at least he never dismissed it. He'd keep journals, track dates of deaths, disappearances, even nights when the elevator skipped floors unprovoked. One such entry read, Octwart 13 room 203, guest called to report, mirror, smiling. Reassigned them to 407. Mirror followed. Which brings us to mirrors. The Cecil had over 200 of them. Most cheap, poorly installed, vaguely funhouse-esque. But the one in the lobby, the big one behind the front desk, had been there since 1927. Legend said if you looked at it long enough after midnight, you'd see someone checking in who wasn't there. Vinny said it happened to him once. The figure waved, then mouthed the words, "Still here." And speaking of still here, Amy was not doing great. She hadn't slept. The bagpipes in room 203 had gotten louder. Now, they played only one note, a low, droning B-flat that rattled her fillings. Her toothpaste kept changing colors. Her phone screen glitched every time she looked in the mirror. She tried to call the front desk. The line picked up automatically. "Hello," she said. A pause. Then a voice. "Stay. Stay. Stay." She hung up, threw her things in a duffel, ran for the elevator. It was already waiting. The left one. As she stepped inside, the lights flickered. The doors didn't close. Instead, the elevator sank. Just a few inches, like it was exhaling. Then it rose. Slowly. Buttons lit up in a random sequence. Threr, fer, ter, ter, ter. There was no 13th floor, and that's your quirky detail for today. Officially, most hotels skip the 13th floor. Elevators go from 12 to 14. Superstition, sure, but the Cecil has a 13th floor. You just don't talk about it, because if you press the wrong button at 300, the elevator might take you there. And then, good luck finding your way back. Amy jumped out at the 10th. The hallway was dim. The carpet pattern shifted as she walked. Her room key card now read, room 505. She hadn't requested it, but the door was open. Inside dust. No bed. No furniture. Just an old rotary phone. Off the hook. Still humming. Behind her, the door clicked shut. In the lobby, Vinny's chair sat empty, but if you listened closely, the rotary phone was ringing, and on the security monitor, room 505 had someone in it again. If you ever need a place to lay low after committing unspeakable acts, the Cecil Hotel used to be the spot. Sure, there were cheaper places, cleaner ones where the wallpaper didn't weep quietly at night. But none could offer quite the same level of anonymity as the Cecil, especially if your idea of traveling light included a duffel bag of knives and a newspaper clipping about your own manhunt. Which brings us to the 1980s, the golden age of leather jackets, synthesizers, and serial killers on vacation. Richard Ramirez, known to most as the Night Stalker, terrorized Southern California in 1984 and 1985. He broke into homes. He murdered, raped, tortured, and whispered satanic verses like they were bedtime rhymes. During his killing spree, he lived quite casually on the 14th floor of the Cecil Hotel. Here's your true historical fact. Ramirez would reportedly return to the hotel after his crimes, toss his bloodied clothes in the dumpster behind the building, and stroll back through the lobby in nothing but underwear. No one stopped him. This was downtown LA in the 80s. Weird was normal. The night clerk said he smelled like copper and cigarettes. One of them offered him a mint once. Ramirez smiled, took it, never chewed, just swallowed it. After he was arrested, reporters tried to track down where he'd lived during the murders. When they found out it was the Cecil, the press collectively went, "Oh, yeah, that checks out." Not long after Ramirez, another killer checked in. Jack Unterweger was an Austrian journalist. Yes, journalist who'd been convicted of murdering a woman in the 1970s, served time, wrote some poetry, and got released. European media treated him like a rehabilitation success story. So in 1991, when he came to LA to write about American crime, he naturally picked the Cecil as his base of operations, because of course he did. During his stay, at least 3 sex workers were murdered in Los Angeles, strangled with their own bras, just like his earlier victims in Europe. Jack denied everything. The LAPD was suspicious, but he was charming, wore scarves, and used phrases like post-penal existentialism, so people gave him the benefit of the doubt, until they didn't. He was arrested, convicted, hanged himself in prison with shoelaces. It was very on brand. By then, the Cecil wasn't just a place people died, it was a place where killers thrived. A 5-star Yelp review for darkness. Amy didn't know any of this. At least not when she stepped out of room 505 with shaking hands and a growing sense that her stay had shifted. The hallway seemed longer. The walls subtly bowed inward, like the building was exhaling toward her. She tried to take the stairs, but each floor looked the same. Beige, buzzing, infinite. She passed a door that said, Room 1408, even though the building supposedly ended at 12 floors. She passed it 3 times. Eventually, she found herself back in the lobby. But it wasn't her lobby. It was older, dimmer. A rotary phone sat on the check-in counter. The clerk was reading a 1985 newspaper. She backed away. The front doors opened. A tall man walked in, grinning. He wore sunglasses. At night, he smelled like copper and cigarettes. Amy blinked. The man was gone. Just a trail of ash on the floor. Cue quirky detail: Ramirez reportedly brushed his teeth with Coca-Cola. Said it gave him a sting that felt like truth. Not medically advisable, but very in line with his aesthetic. Back at the front desk, the rotary phone began ringing. Amy didn't answer. Instead, she opened the guest book, hoping for names, maybe clues, maybe a note that said "Run" in smeared lipstick. Instead, she found a line that read, Jack Unterweger, press rate, paid in blood. She dropped the book. It snapped shut on its own. That's when she noticed the mirror behind the desk. It didn't reflect her. Instead, it showed 2 men, one in a leather jacket with a satanic pentagram on his palm, the other in a silk scarf, typing on a vintage typewriter. Both smiling, both staring at her. A philosophical debate has raged for years over the murder house theory. The idea that some locations don't just host evil, but generate it. Some scientists argue that environmental factors like mold, carbon monoxide, or low-frequency vibrations can cause hallucinations, fear, even aggression. Others say that's just science's way of whistling past the graveyard. But the Cecil doesn't need mold. It has a personality, a guest book filled with regret, a scent that smells faintly like bleach and confession. Amy ran, out the lobby, into the street. The air hit her like a slap. Traffic blared. People walked past her without noticing she was pale, shaking, holding a duffel bag, and looking like she'd sprinted out of a murder opera. She turned back toward the hotel. The doors were gone. The building was still there. Sure, but it wasn't her entrance. The awning had changed. The neon sign was missing a letter, and where the glass doors had been, there was now a solid brick wall. She reached for her phone. No signal. She opened the map. No Cecil Hotel on the app. Just a pin that said, "You are here." The screen glitched. Her reflection blinked independently of her. Amy did the only reasonable thing left. She went to a nearby diner, ordered waffles, sat in a booth by the window. Behind her, the radio played a jazz song she didn't recognize. Bagpipes faded in underneath it. Soft. Droning. The waitress dropped the check. It read, "Room 1408, check back in midnight." Amy left the tip in quarters and walked out. Because if there's one rule she was beginning to understand, it's this. You don't leave the Cecil, you just change floors. By the time Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil Hotel in 2013, the building had already devoured decades of tragedy. But her story would be different. Her story wouldn't just haunt the hallways, it would haunt the internet. Elisa was a 21-year-old student from Vancouver. She loved books, ran a Tumblr blog full of poetry and vintage fashion, and had dreams of traveling through California by train and bus. She checked into the Cecil on January 26th, alone. Backpack, camera, a journal full of dreams. The hotel had recently rebranded itself as Stay on Main in an attempt to escape its cursed Yelp reputation. But like someone putting a fresh coat of paint over a cursed sarcophagus, it fooled no one. A week later, she vanished. Here's your true historical fact. Elisa's disappearance launched one of the largest online mystery investigations in digital history. Reddit threads, YouTube breakdowns, timeline maps, conspiracy diagrams. The whole internet went full Sherlock Holmes, but with worse hygiene and more animated arrows. But what truly froze people's blood was the elevator footage. It's grainy, time-stamped, and somehow worse in low quality. In the video, Elisa steps into the elevator. She presses several buttons. The doors don't close. She peeks into the hallway, hides in the corner, steps out, back in, out again, waving her arms like she's talking to someone. Or something. Her movements are erratic. Her hands flutter like she's underwater. Then she's gone. The elevator finally closes, alone. The footage went viral. Overnight, people speculated wildly. Was she running from someone? On drugs, having a mental health episode possessed? No one knew. 19 days later, hotel guests started complaining about the water. It was brown. Tasted weird. The pressure was low. Eventually, a maintenance worker checked the rooftop water tanks. Inside one of them, Elisa Lam's body. Naked, decomposing, face up. There was no clear explanation of how she got there. The tank hatch was heavy. The alarm should have triggered if someone accessed the roof. The autopsy showed no drugs, no alcohol, no signs of trauma. Just death, and mystery, and possibly the worst hotel Yelp review in history. This brings us back to Amy. She was now staying in room 1408, or, as the elevator labeled it, just no number, no floor. But when she stepped out, that's where she ended up. Her room was modern, weirdly clean. White bed sheets, white walls, white light from the windows, except there were no windows. The air felt filtered. The silence was mechanical, like the room itself had been soundproofed. Not to protect her, but to prevent the room from getting out. She sat on the edge of the bed. It sighed beneath her. She turned on the TV. Static. Then it cut to elevator footage. Grainy. Black and white. It was her, Amy, in the elevator, mirroring Elisa's movements. Step out. In corner. Wave. Vanish. She turned the TV off. It turned itself back on. This time, it showed Elisa Lamb, but she wasn't alone. Something was just outside the frame. A blur, a smear of shadow and suggestion. Amy grabbed her things, tried to open the door. No handle. She backed away. The walls hummed. A voice through the vent whispered, "Water's ready." Cue quirky detail. After Elisa's body was found, conspiracy theorists noticed eerie coincidences. The hotel had hosted a tuberculosis outbreak around the same time. The test used to detect TB, called the Lam-Elisa test. Coincidence probably, creepy, absolutely, disprovable kinda, explainable, not emotionally. Amy searched the room, found nothing except a Gideon Bible, a red toothbrush, and a guest card. It read, "Welcome back, Elisa." Her phone vibrated. A text. No number. Just a message. Check the tank. And a map pin. Roof access. She hesitated. Then did what every protagonist in every bad idea does, followed the instructions. The hallway to the roof was long. Too long. It bent at an angle that shouldn't exist. The carpet changed patterns mid-stride. She passed 2 doors with "Do Not Disturb" signs on the inside. She reached the roof access door. It opened before she touched it. Cold air. A city skyline that flickered like it was buffering. And there, in the middle of the rooftop, 4 water tanks. Silent. Monolithic. Awaiting. Amy stepped closer. One had a ladder. She climbed. At the top, she hesitated. Looked down. The hatch was ajar. Inside, she saw only darkness. And her own reflection, blinking, out of sync. Philosophical debate time. When we observe something, do we change it? Quantum theory says the act of measurement affects the outcome. But what about when the thing observes us in haunted places? Are we witnessing memory or being rewritten by it? Amy leaned closer. From inside the tank came a voice. "You forgot your toothbrush." She ran. Back down. Through the hallway that was now 2 feet narrower. The lights pulsed. A distant jazz tune played. A saxophone crying. Bagpipes joined in. The elevator doors were open. Waiting. She stepped in. Pressed L for lobby. The doors shut. But instead of going down, the elevator went sideways. She blinked. The walls of the elevator now had wallpaper. Same pattern as room 203. The mirror reflected her, but with someone standing behind her. Amy turned. Nothing. The elevator dinged. Doors opened. She was back in the lobby, only it was empty. No desk, no clerk. Just silence. And on the floor a trail of red footprints. Small, bare, leading up the stairs. She followed. On the second-floor landing, she found the toothbrush. Red. Waiting. And a new guestbook page torn out and pinned to the wall. Name Amy room, Elisa checkout. No. There's a game you're not supposed to play, especially not in haunted hotels with a death toll that rivals medium-sized wars. But some people do it anyway, usually around 3,000 Zor, ma'am. After too many Red Bulls and exactly 0 good decisions. It's called the elevator game, originating from Korean internet forums. It's a ritual, or maybe a dare, or possibly a very elaborate prank on people who already think microwaves cause ghosts. The instructions are simple. Get into an elevator. Press the buttons in a specific sequence. 4, 2, 6, 2, 10, 5. When you reach the 10th floor, a woman may enter. Don't look at her. Don't speak to her. She's not human. She'll try to distract you. If you talk to her, you'll never leave. Totally normal way to spend a night alone, right? The game allegedly takes you to another dimension. A place like Earth, but empty. The lights may flicker. The air will feel wrong. Time won't work. And you can't get back unless you do the whole sequence again in reverse. Now here's your true historical fact. In the weeks after Elisa Lam's death, the elevator game surged in popularity online. Countless YouTubers posted videos attempting it, many filmed at night, in sketchy buildings, while narrating in trembling whispers. Some claimed success. Others got stuck between floors and screamed until building security pulled them out. None of them tried it at the Cecil, except one. His name was Tony. Tony had a YouTube channel called Explained and Terrified, where he debunked urban legends while also kind of believing them. He wore a GoPro, carried a ghost-hunting EMF reader, and once claimed he saw Bigfoot eating trail mix behind an Arby's. Tony booked a room at the Cecil under a fake name, brought backup batteries, sage sticks, and his cousin Trevor, who had the emotional range of a doorstop and a sixth sense for where to find vending machines. At 3:03 a.m., they entered the elevator. Trevor filmed. Tony pressed the buttons. Nothing happened. Cool, debunked, Trevor muttered. Then the elevator went back to 10 on its own. Ding. The doors opened. A woman stood there, hair in her face, pale dress, bare feet. Silent. Trevor laughed. Is this one of your friends? The woman turned toward him. The camera feed glitched. Static. Then a high-pitched frequency that made Tony's fillings ache. Then silence. The video abruptly cuts off. They were never seen again. The Cecil's front desk denied any guests by those names. Their YouTube account went dark. The last uploaded thumbnail simply read, "Don't press 10. Back to Amy. She hadn't intended to play the elevator game. She just wanted to get to the lobby. She got in. Pressed L. The elevator ignored her. Instead, it blinked. 4. She watched the doors open. The hallway was empty. A music box played from somewhere far off. She pressed the button again. 2. The doors opened. A fan spun lazily overhead. The lights flickered. 6. Still empty. Her hands started sweating. The panel glowed faintly, like someone had programmed it to remember the ritual even if she hadn't followed it. 2. The hallway this time was filled with fog. A shape at the end. Too still. Too tall. She didn't step out. 10. She reached for the door close button. Too late. The doors opened. There she was. The woman. She wore a faded red coat. Her eyes were too wide. Her smile didn't belong on her face. She didn't step in. She leaned forward and whispered. Amy heard her voice inside her teeth. Don't go back. The elevator slammed shut. Shot down. 5. Then black. Amy woke up on the floor, alone. The elevator was at the lobby was normal, almost. The front desk clerk looked different, like the same person, but redrawn. Softer around the edges, like someone had photoshopped him poorly. Amy asked what time it was. He said, "You've only just arrived." She showed him her key card. He said, "This hotel has no rooms past 12. She asked what floor they were on. He looked up, puzzled. There's only one. Cue your quirky detail. In 2014, an anonymous Reddit user claimed to have attempted the elevator game in a Romanian hospital and came back wrong. Their post stopped suddenly. Their last message was just coordinates somewhere in the middle of the ocean. Again, probably a hoax. Definitely a vibe. Amy turned to leave. The lobby doors opened to darkness, not nighttime absence. Like the world outside the hotel had been deleted. She walked backwards, retraced her steps to the stairwell. Each floor she passed was different. Floor 4, an empty ballroom, chandelier swaying with no breeze. Floor 2 flooded, completely, but dry when she turned back. Floor 6 walls covered in mirrors, all reflected her but slightly off. Wrong clothes, wrong face. She found her original room 608. The door was cracked open. Inside, the bed was made. Her luggage was still there. But the room was younger, the carpet brighter, the faucet not leaking. Her phone buzzed. A notification. Welcome, Elisa. Room 608. Stay as long as you need. Amy turned the phone off. The mirror reflected the lobby, but Amy was not in it. Someone else was. A woman in a red coat, smiling. Amy lay on the bed. She closed her eyes. The bagpipes started playing again. And from the elevator shaft, a voice whispered, "Press 10. There's an old saying among maintenance workers, if the wall breathes, call someone else." And yet, at the Cecil, that was pretty much page 1 of the manual. Luis Ortega had been with the maintenance crew for almost 6 years, which in Cecil time is the equivalent of surviving 12 tours in a haunted war zone. He was good with tools, bad with people, and deeply suspicious of any corridor that felt warmer on one side than the other. He didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in drafts, faulty insulation, and city plumbing that ran on the honor system. But even Luis had limits. Like the day he walked into room 405 and the closet exhaled. He'd been called up for a simple job, a leaking radiator. Nothing fancy. But when he turned the valve, the pipe sighed, not rattled, not groaned, sighed, like a smoker waking up from a long nap. And when he pressed his ear to the wall, he heard it, breathing, slow, rhythmic, wrong. It wasn't airflow. It wasn't mechanical. It was nasal. He left, marked the radiator fixed, never returned. True historical fact. Time. Several maintenance workers at the Cecil have reported strange phenomena, especially near the upper floors and basement levels. Accounts include tools vanishing, sounds of footsteps inside sealed rooms, and even one report of a heartbeat heard inside the pipes during a routine plumbing inspection. One anonymous worker was quoted as saying, "This building's alive. It digests things. Slowly." Amy hadn't read the Yelp reviews, but after 9 floors of increasingly abstract horror, she had a pretty good sense that the hotel wasn't just haunted. It was hungry. She'd retreated to room 608 again, only to find it subtly altered. The furniture was in the same arrangement, but the TV had a dial instead of buttons. The phone cord was coiled like an anxious snake. There were no outlets. Her luggage had been unpacked. Someone or something had hung up her clothes. Even the toothbrush was back in its wrapper. Pristine, and the room breathed, softly, like it was asleep. She placed her hand on the wall. Warm, not sun-warm, body warm, like skin stretched thin over secrets. Amy whispered, "Are you alive?" The air shifted, not like wind, but awareness. As if the room had just opened an eye and decided not to blink. She pulled her hand away. From the vent above the mirror came the sound of laughter, childlike. Then the unmistakable clink of a spoon in a teacup. It wasn't terrifying. It was worse. It was domestic, back when the Cecil was still young and pretending not to be cursed. It had prided itself on amenities, cozy rooms, responsive service, and walls thick enough to hide your secrets. That slogan didn't age well. By the late 1980s, tenants frequently reported strange sounds inside the walls. Rats, they were told, or plumbing. But rats don't breathe in harmony, and plumbing doesn't hum lullabies from the 1930s. Quirky detail break. During a 1993 city inspection, a visiting engineer claimed to hear a woman sobbing behind a locked maintenance panel. When they opened it, they found a broken clock radio and a handful of teeth. They logged the visit as inconclusive. The teeth were never claimed. Amy wandered the hallway again. This time, the carpet had changed color, deep maroon, like dried roses or dried something. The air grew thick, humid. She opened a window, but there was no window, just a curtain hiding a wall. She turned around. The hallway had narrowed. Behind her, footsteps, slow, barefoot, deliberate. She didn't look, didn't breathe, just ducked into the nearest room, empty, clean, fresh towels, except the faucet was running. She turned it off. As she stepped back, she saw something in the mirror, a figure standing in the tub, back turned, tall, wet, then blink and it was gone. She didn't scream. She was too tired to scream, just sat on the floor, hands trembling, and whispered, "Please stop." From the vent above, the breathing paused. Then a voice, "Checkout denied." Amy ran again, down the hall, up the stairs. The stairwell narrowed into a crawl space. She squeezed through, emerged in a hallway she didn't recognize. The wallpaper was moving, just slightly, like lungs expanding, and the sound the breathing was everywhere now. In the floorboards, in the ceiling, like the whole hotel had fallen asleep, and she was trapped inside its dream. Philosophical debate time. In architecture, there's an idea called the genius loci, the spirit of a place. Some believe every structure has an essence, shaped by its purpose, its use, its history. A chapel carries peace. A courtroom carries tension. A hotel like the Cecil its genius loci would be grief, or madness, or entropy wearing a bellhop uniform. Amy stumbled into a service hallway. Exposed pipes, brick walls, a door marked boiler. She opened it. Inside heat, oppressive, steam rising from floor grates. She heard it again. The breathing, louder, and now words, garbled, echoing. She never left. He stayed too long. You fit the shape. In the far corner of the boiler room, she saw it. A lump, wrapped in a bedsheet. Twitching, she stepped closer. It unwrapped itself. Nothing inside, just air. And then it inhaled. Amy ran. Back through the hall, the walls pulsed. The exit door appeared, then disappeared. She passed room 203. The door was open. Inside music, jazz, a music box tune, and the bagpipes. Always the bagpipes. Amy whispered. What are you? The hotel didn't answer. It just exhaled, and in the corner of the hallway mirror, she saw her reflection only this time. It wasn't following her. It smiled, and stayed. Linda Kay was not what you'd call a typical Cecil guest. She had a neck pillow shaped like a golden retriever, a suitcase with a color-coded packing system, and a laminated printout of every Yelp review the hotel had ever received. She believed in consumer rights, medium-rare steaks, and peppermint essential oil as a protective aura cleanser. She lasted 20 hours. It began with the toothbrush. Linda had brought her own, naturally. A sleek electric model with 5 vibration modes and a built-in UV sanitizer. But when she returned from her first short walk around the block, she found the toothbrush bristling red. Not blood, not lipstick. Something in between. Like regret had invented a shade just for her. She screamed, filed a complaint, took a photo, sent it to the manufacturer, filed another complaint. Then her toothpaste started humming. A low mechanical tone, vibrating on the counter like it had somewhere to be. By 11 per. She was at the front desk, demanding a refund, a transfer, and a sage smudging kit. The intern on night duty, whose badge read, technically not responsible, upgraded her to a corner suite. He smiled. Told her, we've had good luck with room 1111. The lights only flicker clockwise. She took it. That was her mistake. Now here's your true historical fact. Linda Kay did exist. In 2005, she filed a formal complaint against the Cecil Hotel, still under its Stay on Main branding, citing auditory hallucinations, objects moving without human contact, and emotional distress caused by what appeared to be a sobbing mirror. Her claim was dismissed due to lack of evidence. She later self-published a memoir titled Brushed by Darkness 1, Woman's Fight Against Haunted Hygiene. It has a 2.7-star rating on Goodreads. Back in room 1111, Linda unpacked again, set her things out just so. Taped over the mirror with motivational quotes, "You are light, you are safe. Haunted hotels are just confused buildings." She turned on the faucet. The water came out in perfect rhythm. Drip, drip, knock, drip, knock, knock, drip. Then it spelled something in Morse code. She didn't know Morse code, but she was pretty sure it said, "Leave your molars." Linda took her things, marched to the elevator, and punched the button like she was trying to stun it. The doors opened. A bellhop stood inside. Mid-30s, crisp uniform, vacant smile, eyes like soot. "Going down?" he asked. Linda said, "Absolutely not." The doors closed. She took the stairs. She made it to the lobby, handed in her key, and said, "This building violated me." And then, before anyone could ask what that meant, she walked out into the street and never looked back. Quirky detail time. According to a former maid interviewed in a 2011 documentary, Room 1111 was known among staff as the Swallower. Not because it ate people, though that was implied, but because things vanished there. Watches, phones, wedding rings. Once, an entire suitcase. The only object ever found again, a single tooth. It wasn't anyone's. Now, Amy didn't know about Linda, but she did find her memo. Tucked in the nightstand of room 608 between a dead Bible and a slightly alive copy of Reader's Digest from 1996 was a note in all caps. If your toothbrush whispers, run. She read it twice, underlined run. Then she noticed something worse. Her toothbrush, once white and blue, was now gray, and damp, and humming. She opened her bag. Inside teeth. Not hers. A dozen. Maybe more. No roots. Just enamel. Clean and rattling. Amy threw the bag across the room. The sound they made landing on the carpet was wet. She ran to the elevator. Pressed every button. The doors opened on the 7th floor. Nothing. The 9th? A hallway full of smoke. The 12th? Silence. Then a voice from behind a locked door. Why'd you bring teeth? She got out on the 10th. Walked the hall. Every room she passed had numbers written in reverse. Room 1W0 blinked like a bad light bulb. 30B sounded like someone inside was chewing. She turned back. Her room key now read, Linda. Amy didn't scream anymore. She just laughed. That low, slow laugh people use when they finally accept the absurdity of their situation. Like when a squirrel falls into your cereal, or your hotel tries to emotionally gaslight you with plumbing. She made her way back to room 608, locked the door, sat on the bed. A toothbrush sat waiting. Different color, still humming. She tossed it. From the bathroom came a voice. You forgot to floss. The mirror fogged. Again. That word. Stay. She wiped it away. This time, the message underneath was new. You're cleaner now. Amy blinked. In the mirror, she saw her reflection smiling, brushing its teeth. Even though she wasn't, the reflection leaned forward, whispered, You're not Linda, but you will be. Philosophical debate interlude. What defines identity in a place where time is loose and mirrors lie? If a hotel strips away your memories, your behaviors, your name, are you still you? Or just the next echo in a long hallway of copies? Amy stood up, moved to the hallway. One door was open now. Room 1111. Inside, clean sheets, fresh towels. Her suitcase unpacked. The toothbrush on the sink was already brushing itself. On the mirror, welcome back. Linda. Amy smiled. Her molars ached, but not for long. The YouTuber arrived with 2 GoPros, a caffeine addiction, and 3.2 million subscribers who loved nothing more than watching a guy named Dax scream at dust motes. His channel was called Ghost Smash Live, and his signature sign-off was, Smash that like button harder than a haunted priest. Dax wasn't subtle, but he was confident, and for his 300th episode, he wanted a big one. The Cecil Hotel, 48 hours, no sleep, no escape, just me, the ghosts, and your prayers in the comments, he told the camera. Oh, and if I start speaking Latin backwards, just unsubscribe. It was meant to be ironic. He checked in under a fake name. Brought backup batteries, infrared scanners, spirit boxes, EMF meters, and 3 cases of Monster Energy. Room 504, because 666 was unavailable, and 505 was still under unofficial lockdown ever since it tried to inhale a night clerk. At first, everything was disappointingly normal. Flickering lights, sure. Cold spots, naturally. But Dax had seen worse. He mocked the creaky floors, yelled demons into every bathroom. Even tried the elevator game, nothing happened. Unless you count a mysterious vending machine giving him 3 Twix in a row. But on night 2, things changed. True historical fact. Over the years, At least 7 paranormal investigators have documented unusual electromagnetic fluctuations, camera malfunctions, and auditory anomalies in the Cecil Hotel, particularly in rooms on the 5th and 14th floors. One team reportedly caught a voice saying, "Don't record me in 3 different languages." Another brought a priest who left halfway through the first night and changed careers. Back to Dax. At exactly 3:33, his GoPro glitched. The livestream audience saw him sitting on the bed, drinking Monster, talking about how bored he was. Then freeze, frame skip, and suddenly, he was staring into the mirror, whispering something unintelligible. "Is this a bit?" typed one commenter. Bro blinked in Morse code. Another joked. Then the feed cut to black. When it came back on, the room was empty. Camera still rolling. Pointed at the mirror. A single comment appeared. "We are live." Amy saw the stream hours later, somehow on her phone, which no longer had any service. It had just appeared. One notification. A link. She clicked it. The video showed Dax entering room 504. Behind him, in the mirror, a figure. Long hair, red coat. Smiling. She knew that smile. She'd seen it in her reflection. She tried to look away, but the video kept playing. Even after she locked the screen, she had to take the battery out to stop it. The moment she did, her phone vibrated in her hand. Battery not installed. Still vibrated. From the screen came a whisper. "We're not recording anymore. We're remembering." Amy dropped it. From the hallway came static. Loud. Crackling. She opened the door. The hallway had changed again. Cameras lined the walls. Old ones, VHS, GoPros, disposable Kodaks, all pointed toward her, flashing. A voice overhead, distorted like a bad podcast recording, crackled. "Welcome to your final live stream." She ran. Every step, the hallway extended. Doors multiplied. Numbers warped. Room 404, room 707, room error, room buffering, then silence. A single room at the end. Open. Light spilling out. She stepped inside. It was a replica of her childhood bedroom. Posters on the wall. A nightlight. Her old teddy bear. One eye missing. But the wallpaper Cecil green. The air smelled like old Monster energy and regret. In the mirror, not her. Dax. Mouth moving. Saying it's your channel now. Amy backed away. Her reflection stayed. Then it waved. Quirky detail. Dax's followers kept getting strange messages in the weeks after his disappearance. Snippets of video showing ceilings, carpet, room numbers. One fan reported a package arriving at their door containing only a cassette, labeled Press 10 and a toothbrush. No return address. The YouTube channel auto-posted one final video, a black screen, titled "We'll Be Right Back," with a thumbnail of Amy, asleep, in room 608. Philosophical moment: is a camera, a witness, or a participant? Does recording horror deflect it or invite it in? In many haunted lore traditions, the act of observation gives entities permission to appear, to follow, to edit your narrative. Amy understood that now. She closed her eyes. The cameras stopped flashing. Her phone buzzed. One new subscriber, named Cecil. She was being archived. The day the water turned black started like any other. 2 guests complained about low water pressure. One said their shower was sweating. A third claimed her bath was moaning. Housekeeping dismissed it as L.A., plumbing, which is basically held together by duct tape, false optimism, and one guy named Carlos who refuses to retire. But then came the taste complaints. The water smells like pennies. It tastes like Band-Aids. It's thick. Maintenance was dispatched. Luis, yes, the same Luis from the breathing wall incident, grabbed his toolkit and flashlight. And maybe a small rosary. Not that he believed in that sort of thing. He just respected options. The rooftop was padlocked, as always. But the lock was open. Not broken. Open. That was the first red flag. The second was the crow sitting on the railing, staring at Luis like it had money on what he'd find. The Cecil had 4 water tanks. Big, cylindrical, old. They looked like props from a Cold War thriller. Luis climbed the ladder to the nearest one, removed the hatch. Dark. He shone his light. That's when he saw it. A shape, floating, hair spreading like ink, eyes open, skin pale. It was a body, Elisa Lamb's. The police were called. The building evacuated. The story went viral. And just like that, the Cecil was back in the headlines. Again. True historical fact. The discovery of Elisa Lamb's body in the rooftop tank did, indeed, follow multiple water complaints from guests. Some even joked about the flavored showers on TripAdvisor. One British couple interviewed later said they used the water for tea. They were not told the source until after they'd checked out. Their Yelp review was 1 star. Not for the corpse, just the elevator. Amy heard about it after the fact. She was in her room, not a room hers. 608, again. The furniture was familiar now. The mirror had stopped fogging. The bed no longer creaked. It sighed. She turned on the faucet. Thick water, red-tinged. She didn't drink it, but she didn't stop it, either. Instead, she whispered to it. Was she scared? The faucet pulsed, then answered, not in words. In memory. Suddenly Amy wasn't in the room anymore. She was floating, dark water above her. Soundless. Weightless. A stillness so deep it felt like time had drowned too. She saw flashes. Elisa. Pressing elevator buttons, hiding. Smiling. The woman in red, watching. A rooftop hatch. Open hands. Then black. Amy gasped. She was back. Wet. Soaked to the skin. But the room was dry. On the mirror. Now you know. She packed. Again. It never worked. Every time she tried to leave, the lobby changed. Doors vanished. The front desk was unmanned, or worse, occupied by someone with no mouth. Once, she made it outside. The street was empty. Soundless. Not deserted, erased. She waved at a passing car. It reversed, without turning, then burst into crows. After that, she stopped trying for a while. Quirky detail. During a 2016 renovation, workers discovered a sealed crawl space above the 14th floor. Inside, one bathtub, one cracked mirror, and a tape recorder looping what sounded like elevator music mixed with someone softly weeping. The area was resealed. The foreman quit. Became a beekeeper. Apparently, it's a common exit career. Amy found herself drawn to the roof. At night. The ladder shone faintly under the moonlight. The tank lids were shut now. Chained. But her name was etched into one. Not written. Etched. She touched the metal. Cold. Zaitos water sloshed. She heard her own voice from inside, singing, the lullaby her mother used to hum. Something about stars, or maybe wolves. It was hard to remember. She pressed her ear to the tank. It whispered, "You float better now." She backed away. The crow returned, landed on the railing, spoke, clear as a podcast intro. Still here. She didn't answer. It flew off. Into the building, right through the wall. Philosophical debate break. In various spiritual traditions, water is both life and barrier. It cleanses, yes, but it also separates. The living from the dead, the remembered from the forgotten. A body in water is preserved longer, but sometimes it isn't a body anymore. It's a message. Amy walked the hallway. The lights flickered. Room numbers reversed again. She passed one labeled pool. It wasn't a room. It was a door. Behind it, water. Still. Deep. A tiled floor that stretched into nothing. And floating, at the center herself, or someone that looked like her. She opened her mouth to scream. Water poured out. Thick. Rust-tinted. She collapsed. Woke up back in room 60, the faucet dripping. Toothbrush buzzing. Mirror fogged. On the glass. You're almost ready. Amy didn't move. She knew what came next. Checkout. But not the kind with a key. The kind where you leave a version of yourself behind. The kind where the water keeps a copy. Forever. Maps are supposed to keep you safe. They're the promise of order. A guarantee that the hallway you just turned into exists. That stairs go up or down, but not sideways. That a room has 4 walls, not 5. and certainly not none. But the Cecil never read the manual. In 2010, a graduate architecture student named Dylan Wallace got permission to study the building for his thesis, Spatial Anomalies in Early 20th Century Urban Design. He chose the Cecil because it was cheap, weird, and deeply underinspected. Also, because he had a fascination with places that shouldn't still be here. Within 48 hours, he was deeply unwell. Dylan arrived with blueprints from the city records office. 14 floors, 1 basement, approximately 700 rooms, stairwells on either end, and a single elevator shaft. Neat, symmetrical, predictable, until he walked it. He began on the 5th floor. The hallway was 2 feet longer than the plan said. Room 513 was listed as a utility closet, but inside was a full-suite bed, dresser, even a dusty record player. He returned the next day. Room 513 was gone. In its place, a brick wall. When he told the building manager, he got a shrug and the classic LA answer to anything spooky old buildings do that. So Dylan brought measuring tape, a digital scanner, laser mapping gear. The readings made no sense. Rooms overlapped. Corridors curved in impossible angles. On the 8th floor, he found a locked door labeled Tower. The blueprints had no record of it. Inside a staircase, narrow, endless. He climbed for over 20 minutes. At the top, he found another hallway, identical to the 8th floor, but mirrored. He rechecked the numbers. They were written backward. That was the last thing in his notes. He didn't turn in the thesis. He didn't graduate. He became a beekeeper. Amy, well, she hadn't read Dylan's report, but she knew. She felt it. The halls had started shifting. She would walk for 10 steps, then find herself back at the elevator. She'd pass the same painting, an oil landscape of trees, but in one version, the trees had no leaves. In another, they had no bark. In the third, they had faces. She tried to count the rooms. One hallway had 22 doors on one side, none on the other. She opened the third, inside another hallway. Longer. Carpet changed halfway down. One side was wet. She opened another door, a stairwell. The steps sloped upward, then downward, then flat. Like the building couldn't remember what stairs were. She climbed them anyway. Each floor had a different smell. Floor 6, disinfectant. Floor 8, old perfume. Floor 11, hot pennies. Floor, mold and flowers. She reached a landing that wasn't on any map. No number. Just a brass plaque that read, "You made it." Amy laughed. It sounded hollow. She turned the corner. The hallway was upside down. She was walking on the ceiling. Gravity stayed with her. But her brain itched. A flickering light above, now below, buzzed in protest. At the end of the hall, a door with no knob, just a keyhole. Amy reached for her keycard. It was blank. From the wall, a slot opened. A new key slid out. Heavy, cold, brass. She used it. The door creaked open. Inside a small room. Stone walls, 1 chair, a desk. On the desk, a blueprint of the Cecil Hotel. But it was wrong. The structure spiraled inward. Rooms nested inside rooms. Some labeled no, others labeled wait. The basement had 6 sub-basements. The roof had a door labeled below. In the center, a space marked only as the stay. No door, just a symbol, a circle with a line through it. Amy traced it with her finger. The paper pulsed. From the desk drawer came a sound. She opened it. A tooth. Warm. Still humming. She stepped back. The room rearranged. Walls shuddered. Suddenly she was in the lobby. Except it was sideways. The front desk lay on its side. The chandelier dangled horizontally. A bellhop walked past on the ceiling, whistling a funeral march. She closed her eyes, breathed, opened them. Back in room 608. Toothbrush on the sink. Mirror fogged. On the glass. You've seen the shape. Quirky detail, the building permits for the Cecil show multiple additions that were never completed. Plans for a 15th floor ballroom, a subterranean pool, and even a rooftop garden. None of them were ever built. And yet, several guests have seen them. One reported dancing to swing music in the top floor ballroom in 1988. There is no ballroom. There never was. Philosophical moment. What happens when a space stops obeying the laws of architecture? When a map is no longer reliable and gravity becomes an opinion? Psychologists call this derealization. Occultists call it a thinning of the veil. Philosophers call it Tuesday at the Cecil. Amy now knew the layout wasn't broken. It was intentional. The Cecil had no fixed floor plan. It grew, reacted, expanded. For some guests, it was a simple hotel. For others, a maze, a trap, a womb. She turned back toward the hall. A new door had appeared. No number, no knob. Just one word etched in red. Stay. A fresh coat of paint can't cover a murder. But that didn't stop them from trying. In 2017, a new management company took over the Cecil Hotel. They had a bold vision, a rebrand budget, and an optimistic intern named Heather, who carried around a clipboard like it could ward off spirits. Their first move changed the name. No more Cecil. Too haunted. Too Googleable. They called it the Stay on Main. A boutique experience. Minimalist charm meets urban grit. They threw around buzzwords like revitalization, mid-century modern, and dark tourism. They put up mood boards featuring succulents, Edison bulbs, and smiley stock photo baristas. There were even talks of a rooftop yoga program and possibly, God help us, an oat milk cafe in the lobby. Heather documented the whole process. She filmed the new paint crew, bright white walls, stripped the carpet, replaced the old chandeliers with modern glass orbs that looked like they could whisper investment advice. She was excited until the staff started disappearing. First it was Daryl, a janitor, clocked in, never clocked out. Then Mariella from accounting. Her last known email was just the words, "Which floor is this?" repeated 27 times. Heather got nervous, but she kept filming. It was good content. She uploaded weekly videos. Turning a murder hotel into a minimalist dream, staging a suite where someone definitely died. Ghosts hate, throw pillows, a style guide. But the comments got weird. Viewers started seeing people in the background, faces in mirrors, doors opening behind her, a shape standing behind the new check-in desk that wasn't visible when she turned around. In one video, Heather walked past the elevator. It opened. She didn't notice. A hand reached out, paused, then slowly slid back inside. The next video never came. Her channel now displays one thumbnail. Heather. Smiling. Text overlay. We're open. True historical fact. The hotel did undergo a major renovation attempt starting in 2017. New owners. New name. The plan was to convert it into a mixed-use residential hotel hybrid. Construction halted several times due to financial issues and reportedly unexplained safety violations. The building remains, in many ways, incomplete, but still open. Amy watched Heather's final upload from the lobby TV. It wasn't plugged in. The image flickered. Heather smiled. Behind her. Room 608. Amy turned. There it was, again. The hallway narrowed now, like it was exhaling. The front desk bell rang. By itself, no one stood there. A clipboard sat on the counter. Guest list. Amy scanned the names. Elisa Lamb Richard Ramirez. Linda K. Dax. Ghost Smash. Liv Tony and Trevor Elevator. Game Dylan Wallace Heather. And now, Amy checked in, awaiting checkout. She flipped the page. The next name, blank. She looked up. The lobby doors were wide open. Sunlight streamed in. Birds chirped. Outside. The real world moved in slow, beautiful chaos. Honking horns, coffee carts. A guy in rollerblades yelling at a pigeon. Amy stepped forward, 1 foot outside. The door slammed shut. The street vanished. Behind her, the TV showed her reflection. She was smiling, but she wasn't. Not really. The bell rang again. This time, Amy answered it. The clipboard disappeared. The lobby changed again. Now the walls were white. The lighting soft. Jazz music played gently. A barista smiled at her. No eyes. Cold brew, he asked. Amy nodded. She sat at a mid-century modern chair. The coffee was perfect. Inside the cup reflected back. She saw the rooftop, a water tank, and something floating in it. She didn't look away. Quirky detail. In the rebranding attempt, developers tried to digitally erase mentions of the hotel's dark past from online listings. But every time they changed the metadata, the original content reappeared. Even Google Street View reverted the hotel name on its own. Eventually, someone tagged the building's exterior in spray paint. Call it what you want. It still remembers. Philosophical moment, rebranding is a human instinct. Paint over history. Rename pain. Put throw pillows on guilt. But you can't redecorate memory. Not when the walls are sentient. Not when the mirror's smile is older than your lineage. Amy stood. She walked back to the elevator. Pressed the button. The doors opened. Inside a clipboard. A single line. Name Amy, checkout status denied. Assigned role assistant manager. The lights flickered. She stepped in. The elevator went down. Deeper than the basement. The digital panel read, "Stay." She exhaled. Softly. The building inhaled. She was part of it now. The elevator doors opened. Amy stepped into a room that wasn't a room. Exactly. More like a memory that had gotten lost and grown moldy. The walls were lined with keys, hundreds of them dangling from hooks. Old-fashioned, brass, and vibrating ever so slightly as if humming in unison. Every key had a name. Some names were scratched out. Others were written backwards. One read simply, "You." In the center of the room was a desk. Behind it sat a receptionist. She had no eyes, no mouth, but she smiled, and she gestured toward a single card on the desk. "Room 0. Amy took it. She didn't speak. She wasn't sure if she could anymore. Her words had started to echo before they left her mouth lately, and once she heard herself say something she hadn't thought yet. She walked down the corridor. The doors blinked as she passed. Each one showed her reflection. In one, she was a bellhop. In another, a guest. In the last, the woman in red, smiling, waiting. She reached room 0. The door opened on its own. Inside her first night at the hotel, the same suitcase, the same toothbrush, the same window that never quite opened. She stepped inside. Her reflection was already there, brushing her teeth. Amy sat on the bed. The room sighed. The faucet turned on. The mirror fogged, and she finally understood. This wasn't a hotel. It was a loop, a story you enter and forget how to leave. A place that doesn't just trap bodies. It traps narrative. Everyone who stayed had a role. The jumper, the screamer, the dreamer, the climber, the bagpiper, the brusher, and now the narrator. Amy lay back. The ceiling swirled slowly, like water circling a drain. Somewhere, footsteps approached. Bare, wet, deliberate. The door creaked open. A girl stepped in. Backpack. First time in LA. Wide-eyed. Her name would be something new. But her role, the same. The walls exhaled. The light dimmed. Amy's eyes closed. The bed beneath her felt soft and distant, like a memory someone else was dreaming. Outside, the city kept moving. Buses sighed. Neon signs buzzed. Someone at a cafe argued about oat milk like it mattered. The world above went on, oblivious to the building that sat quietly among them, watching, listening, remembering. The Cecil isn't loud anymore. It doesn't need to be. It hums, low and patient, a living monument to things that don't end, just repeat. A place where people check in thinking it's just for the night. But time doesn't work here. It loops, folds, waits. Amy's story, like all the others, isn't over. It just settled. And the hotel, still open, still hungry, still here. Good night, wherever you're watching from. Leave a light on in the hallway. You never know who's checking in next.